So to give you an overview of what we're going to chat about this morning, firstly, just to give you an overview, we hear about personal branding. What is it? What isn't it? And how then does this relate? How do we create ourselves as powerful brands in the working world, whether it's your own business, whether you're working for a company, and, it doesn't matter where you are in your career trajectory, whether you've just started or, you've had a lot of experience. So unpacking that and then unpacking how do we start to put ourselves forward in the best way. And for me, what's really pertinent and why I'm so passionate about this topic is that I've had to live it, breathe it. So I always say in my previous life, I started my career in branding and advertising. And over the years, I found that I was pulled towards this path of personal development. And so I had to create my own brand. I had to reinvent myself. I had to figure out, okay, what does this mean if I'm changing? And so that's what gives me so much joy to share the lessons with you today. So if you think about some of the brands, right, that you've interacted with this morning, what would come into your head? So typically the brands that would come up is Colgate or Aquafresh or Samsung or Apple or Elizabeth Arden. If you just think about what are the brands that you engage with personally every single day. And then if I said to you, okay, let's select a brand and let's take Apple, right? Apple iPhone. And I said, what are the words, the experiences, the images that come up when you think about Apple? And in the interest of time, I'm going to just share the common ones that come up. And you can put it in the chat as well. But, if I said Steve Jobs, we think about design, expensive always comes up. We think about sleek. We think about user experience, right? So if we started to unpack and say, okay, well, what is a brand? A brand is a
Why is it done?
There's a sound problem, please.
I think Lori may have.
Lori has dropped off the call. I'm going to call her.
Maybe connectivity problem.
Yes, I'll call her. Apologies. I've just spoken to Lori and she didn't realize that the call had been dropped on her side. So she will be joining us shortly.
Thank you, Trace. Thank you.
Technology is a terrible thing.
It was worrying me and I didn't realize it was like that. Usually eyes red. I didn't realize like that. No, you rub your eyes red, but I didn't
Oh
realize.
my God. Guys, I've been waffling and waffling and waffling for the last. Where did you get up to, or did you get nothing?
I think we should start again. It's only 10 past, so
No,
we
it's
can just go.
fine.
Yeah.
So sorry. Did everybody get anything?
Yes, move one forward. The next
Where did
one.
you get up to?
How
You
are
got
you
it.
doing?
Sorry, I'm
That's
just
it.
thinking
So you were
like,
discussing the
from a
brand.
And then
Okay,
reporting
let's
point
carry
of
on
view.
from here. Sorry about that, guys.
Sorry, I'm just thinking from a reporting point of view because I know there's
you already call my dog to me. One of
Trace,
my
in the
maybe
slide.
you don't mind to start it like quickly at the beginning.
Okay. Do you want me to start again, guys? Okay.
Yes, please may I ask everybody to mute themselves? There's a lot of background noise.
Okay. I will catch us up. Right. Trace, can
I
I
think
kick
it's
off?
coming from Tabang. There's a
Super.
background voice coming from Tabang.
Okay, great, guys. If everyone can mute themselves, thank you. Apologies. Okay, Trace, thanks for phoning me. Let us get going. So, to kick off, what is branding? Let's take this from the top. Branding is something that's really personal to me because I started my career in branding and advertising. But over the trajectory of my career, when I joined the Dots, I was really pulled to this path of personal development. And I had to completely reinvent my brand, become a speaker, become a coach, go through the skills. And so this is what makes me really passionate and excited to share these tools with you today. So if you think about some of the brands you interact with on a daily basis, the brands that typically come up, right? It could be something you had for breakfast, your toothpaste, Colgate, Kellogg's, Elizabeth Arden, Dove, whatever the ones you normally engage with. And for me, if I give the example, Apple iPhone, right? We all either have or we know of the brand Apple. But when we think about the brand Apple, we get these words, we get these images that come into our mind that we associate with that brand Apple. And again, some of the most common ones that always come up is sleek design, Steve Jobs, expensive, good user experience. So let's unpack what is a brand. And a brand is a promise, because it's a promise of the value you're going to receive for investing in that. But really what a brand is for me is a sorting device, because we've got all this choice. So if I said to you, I'm going to offer you a plain cola, no name brand with the red label, or Coca-Cola, which one are we going to go for? Naturally Coke, because we get this promise of thirst quenching and joy and whatever the ads tell us. But we also get people who are brands. And I'm sure you'll agree with me that these are powerful brands I've got up on the screen here. Let's take the example of Oprah. We think of Oprah, but they're these words, they're these associations that we think of. And, the typical ones, everybody look under your chair, you get one and you get one, and she's a good listener and a humanitarian. And if we start to think about that, let's go a step further. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, said, a brand for a product is like a reputation for a person. So think about that, because in the same way these brands create these images in our minds, so do you. And what I want to chat to you about this morning and what I want you to leave with is the sense that you are in charge of what are the words that people think of you when they engage with you. So what do you have to do to become a brand? And why does this matter? Because whether you are starting your career, whether you are in a company, whether you're an entrepreneur, people buy into you before they buy your product or service. Let's say you're in a company and there's an interview and it's down to you and one other candidate and your credentials are identical. What is that factor that makes that person go, I'm going to choose them? That's what your brand is. And, another way to think about a brand is, what do people expect of you when they engage with you? Because brands that keep their promises are consistent and trustworthy. And from the minute you engage with clients, people in your company, the ladies at Pick and Pay and Woolworths, you have a brand. Because you're either branded as the smooth professional who gets the job done, or that impatient customer who's not listening. And your brand is a story. And it's a story that helps other people tell themselves a story about you. So everything we do That is what is telling the story, and it's up to us to show up consistently and persistently, because no one knows you as well as you do. And your brand is not what you say about yourself. It's what other people say about you. And you've got to position your brand, or it will be positioned by others. Because if I said to you, think about the people you work with, think about the people you engage with, can you describe them in 3 words? You can, and that's the point, is that people are also ascribing a vocab around you, whether you're consciously involved in the process or not. So what does this mean? How do I become a great brand? And the starting point is to think about, what do you want to be known for? So when someone thinks about you, what are the words that you want to show up in their mind? So that is all branding is. How do you show up in someone's mind? And are your words loyal, trustworthy, creative, ambitious, dynamic? What are those words? But then the question becomes, what are you doing to demonstrate it, right? Because we can't walk around with a t-shirt that says ambitious, trustworthy, loyal. Our brand is experiential, and it's through the things we do, the things we say, the behavior. That is what is creating our brand. And so another way to think about it is, when you walk into the room, what do you want your first impression to be? Is it different? Do people perceive you in a different way? And how do we start to close that gap? So that's what the way that we communicate our brand is so incredibly important. Now, this is the roadmap of how a brand is built. What we're focusing in and honing in on today is the interpersonal skills. And for me, it's the most important one. And we're going to unpack this now. So I'm going to stop sharing for a sec so that I can see the chat. And I'm going to ask you guys to share with me, right? If you think about someone in your life, it could be a boss, it could be a mentor, it could be someone who had a really big impact in your life. Quickly, the first thing that comes to mind, what is the trait that stands out for you the most when you think about this person? Did they believe in you? Do they have empathy? Do they, are they a kind person? What are the things that stood out for you when you think about this person who's really impacted you? As quick as you can. Positivity, trustworthy. Let's do 1 or 2 more, guys. Strength, passionate. These are beautiful. Okay. So now I want you, thank you guys, willing to teach me what they know. That's beautiful. Okay, so now we're going to change track. I want you to think about someone in your life who broke you. They are the complete antithesis. Maybe it was a colleague, maybe it was someone in your family, maybe it was someone you encountered in your career. But when you think about them, you want to forget about them. What is the trait that stands out for you when you think about that person? Negativity. Not honest with feedback, dishonest, deceitful, rude, betrayal. Oh, that's a strong word. That's a very, very strong word. Okay, so thank you for sharing with me. Can someone just confirm I'm back on track and I'm in the land and you can see me?
All good.
Thank you. So think about those words, right, that we just spoke about. Did you notice that when I say think about that person who stood out, you never said to me, they've got so many degrees and they're really intelligent and they're smart. What stood out, the characteristics, was all about interpersonal. It was about emotional intelligence, right? And if you think about now, how does this relate to branding? These are the traits that we want to develop. And your IQ, how smart you are, is what gets you through the door. But your EQ, your emotional intelligence, is what gets you up the ladder. That's how you create a powerful brand. And what your EQ is, it's the ability to understand and manage your own emotions and understand the impact that it has on other people. Guys, you are going to get the slide deck, so don't worry to copy any of this down. So Daniel Goleman created the concept of emotional intelligence. And there's 5 components, which is self-awareness, empathy, motivation, self-regulation, and social skills. And we're going to unpack each of these. And what does it mean? How do I get better at each component so that I'm powerfully building my brand? And again, if you think about, well, why does it matter to be highly intelligent? It's not just about being loyal and trustworthy, but You are calm under pressure. You make decisions. You can manage your stress, right? The low EQ people, we saw betrayal, we saw deceit, but there's no empathy. They've got a fixed mindset. They can't share feelings. And so if you think about where you want to be in your career, these are the traits that are going to move you along much quicker than IQ. So the first component is self-awareness. And really that is, how self-aware are you of your strengths, your weaknesses, your blind spots? Because when you know what needs improvement, we can start to work on it. Your self-awareness is also around that voice in your head. Are we listening to the inner critic? Are we listening to the inner cheerleader? And self-awareness begins with self-reflection. And it's about asking yourself some key questions and saying, okay, is there a steady stream of conflict in my life? Is it always someone else's fault? Am I always blaming? And if you can really honestly identify this pattern, it's about saying, okay, what role am I playing in this? Where am I accountable? Now, our cars are really smart and they've got this early warning system. So we know we're about to run out of petrol. The fuel light comes on. The oil is not looking good. The oil light comes on. So it's got this system to remind us so that we can do something about it before it's too late. Now, we've got the same body wisdom. We've also got an early warning system. And think about the last time you got triggered, right? You got angry, you got stressed. Where did you feel it in your body? Did you feel it, some of us, in our throat, our stomachs, your fists clenching, your jaw tightening? And so when you can tap into that and go, oh, wow, I'm triggered, I'm upset, we can not let it go on too long before we do the wrong thing. Now, self-awareness is also about triggers. What are the things, if we can start to spot that, is it a person that triggers us? Is it a situation? You know, if we're thinking about, often what we talk about triggers building habits. So if someone says, well, I want to stop drinking wine in the week, you got to say to yourself, okay, what is my trigger? Is it a time of day? Is it because it's 5 o'clock? Is it because it's a Friday afternoon? And when you can start to see, oh, yeah, that's when I do that, you can start to work backwards. And it's the same with these triggers that hit us when we get triggered emotionally. And the most important component with self-awareness and the choice we get to make is attitude. Because attitude is the lens through which you view the world. And we can choose to have a lens of self-motivation or self-defeat. And think about people that you want to rally around. They've got that can-do, that go-giver attitude. You know, they will go to the nth degree to get stuff done. But then think about, you know, I always use the example of the Dementors from Harry Potter. So if you haven't seen the movie, they're these creatures that when they walk away from you, it's like the soul's been sucked out of you. And do we all know someone like that? You know, you have a conversation and they walk away and you feel like, oh, but I'm drained, or they're negative, right? And that's what we associate with them, that negativity. And that is why attitude is so important. And it's also self-awareness around how are we showing up to ourselves, because do we listen to that inner critic, or can we bring out that inner cheerleader? And the research says we have between 12 and 60,000 thoughts a day. So guys, I think you play 12,000, ladies, we north of 60,000. But the research says that 80% of these thoughts are negative. And what's worse is we recycle them. So if we are not aware of the voice in our head going, you're not good enough, bad things always happen to you, you'll never get there, and we're recycling that every day, how do we show up powerfully? How do we become a powerful brand, right? So what we want to do is, when you can be aware of that voice in your head, and then 3 steps. So you want to stop, challenge, choose. So stop yourself, challenge the thought. You know, I'm not good enough. Is that based in reality, or is it your own irrational thinking? And then choose a better thought to replace it. And I'm not saying go with, you know, false positive psychology and go, I'm amazing, because, you know, you're not going to believe that. But choose the thought that's going to serve you better. And the reason why we want to be aware of these thoughts is that if you're thinking, let's think about back to Apple, it's got an operating system, right? And it just runs in the background and the phone goes and does what it needs to do. And our thoughts, that's what runs our operating system. Now, the Apple phone's brilliant because it's got a manual, it's got an automatic setting. You get this message that says, we're going to upgrade your software tonight. Ours is a bit more manual. And so to be a powerful brand, you want to say to yourself, okay, what is the story I'm telling myself? Is it I'm too old, I'm too young, I should have done it in my 20s, I'm never going to manage, how am I going to get through this, I'm not good at technology. And you want to question that story, because when you can change the thoughts, change the beliefs, and change your story, you will start to show up to things differently. So if you've told yourself an introvert, you're not going to show up to networking events or put yourself out there. And this is probably the most powerful piece of the self-awareness component. And it's also being aware, of stress. We are facing so much stress at the moment. So just knowing yourself, what happens to you under stress? How do you react when others are under stress? What qualities bother you? So if you know you get particularly heated, or you're under strain at the moment, can you go work in a different room? Can you go work in a safe coffee shop somewhere? So knowing, the more you know yourself, the more you will manage yourself, especially under stress. So some tools is that you just simply want to name the emotion. If you're feeling anxious, name it. Wow, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling frustrated, because then it loses the control it has over you. Because you can either then be identified, because if you're not aware it's going on, now you're so angry, and that's when you lose your temper. Send that email that you didn't want to. And the best thing that you can do is, when you feel triggered, is to take 10 deep belly breaths, because what it does is physically, it's slowing down, it's stopping the adrenaline in your body. It neutralizes the adrenaline, so that you can start to come back to the rational thinking part of the brain, rather than getting triggered in our lizard brain. So you will get these to help you to improve your self-awareness. And the next component in terms of our interpersonal skills, building a powerful brand, is empathy. And really what empathy is, it's that ability to just step out of yourself. It's being other people focused and saying, I wonder what it's like for them. I wonder why are they responding that way? And sometimes we think, well, I don't know them. So the more curious we can be about that person, understand their world, the better we can start to work with that person. And it's also, we've got a view of the world, and we can't impose, well, this is the way I do it, they must do it that way. It's understanding what's their view. We don't have to agree with them. That's not what empathy is. Empathy is understanding logic. Why are they thinking that? And often I'll say to my managers, if maybe someone's consistency is dropped, or they're not performing where they used to, instead of assuming and go, I bet you they're watching Netflix all day, I bet you they're being lazy, it's trying to understand them and figuring it out and going, oh, wow, I didn't know that they're dealing with a sick parent. That's what's going on for them. And the more we can understand their world, the more we can move the relationship forward. And just remember that often people make decisions based on the information and the experience they had at the time. And instead of judging, instead of blaming, instead of criticizing, we just want to get more curious and just go, why? Why are they thinking like that? And the more we can step into their shoes, take a different perspective, the more we're going to show up more powerfully, and that elevates our brand. And self-regulation is the next piece, and this fits largely after self-awareness for me, because okay, I'm angry. I know that I'm angry. Self-regulation is, what are you going to do about it? And this is what separates us from kids, because children have no care for consequences. They will shout, they will scream, they will tantrum, they will do what feels good in the moment. Our bodies would sometimes like us to act like children, but our future selves would be a lot happier if we behaved like grown-ups. And your self-regulation is, what are you doing to just slow yourself down so that you can choose, how am I going to respond in this moment, rather than habitually and go on autopilot and just react. And especially when it comes to conflict, because this is where brands are built. Think about it. When it's the way we deal with people, it's the way we manage these kind of situations that are going to determine, does someone want to work with us? Does someone, what are they walking away thinking? And first we want to assume positive intent. So let's say you speak to someone and they're a little bit off to you, not their usual self. And instead of you thinking to yourself, oh, I bet you I did something, did I upset them? It's just, again, remembering everyone is living a story that you know nothing about. And it's just about saying, wow, I wonder if they got bad news this morning. I wonder if they just heard something that upset them, rather than defaulting to you. And when it comes to conflict, the golden rule is react to the outcome, not to the event. So I'll share a story that demonstrates this. It was a probably about 18 months ago, or just, before COVID, I went to go see a charity organization and they asked me to come in and brainstorm some fundraising ideas. And I'll never forget, I walked through the door. It was raining. It was a Monday morning. And as I'm walking through the door, the woman that I was meeting, Jill, was walking past me. And I said, Jill, don't we have a meeting now? She said, I've just got such a headache. I just want to go to the Clicks and go home. I went, oh, and where's Carol? She said, I don't know. There was this emergency. She left 15 minutes ago. And guys, I literally took a breath and I said to myself, what do you want to be known for? And I said, I'm really sorry you're not feeling well. I walked her to her car. I said, let me know when you're ready to reschedule. And she was really grateful for the way I responded. And that's reacting to the outcome because I know they're amazing. And I know people have bad days. But don't get me wrong. When she walked through that door and she didn't cancel, I was so frustrated inside because like you plan your day. But if I reacted to the event and I said, but why didn't you just cancel? You've just wasted my morning. I'm branded as a very rude person, right? And so think about this, especially with virtual communications. You get a rude email, you get a rude WhatsApp. What's the first thing you want to do? Is, I'm going to show you and you want to respond straight away. But if we respond on emotion, we're going to say something we don't mean, and now it's in cyberspace. So you want to be able to insert a mental pause button. Take a breath, slow yourself down so that you get the choice. How am I going to react here? So write the mail, don't send it. Put it into your drafts, come back to it the next morning, and I promise you're not going to want to send it. And it's also setting your intention before an engagement like this. Before maybe you've got to have a hard conversation. And so ask yourself, what is the outcome? Do I want to be right? Do I want to prove my point? Or my intention for this conversation is I want to be able to work with this person going forward. I don't want there to be any awkwardness. And if you show up to the conversation that way, we can't control the reaction, but we can always control our intent. What are we bringing to that? And so again, it's never just the one interaction. How is this going to impact your desired reputation? Wherever you are in your career, how do I want someone to think of me going forward? And the best part about self-regulation is that we know it's easy to say the right thing at the right time, but it's always hard to left unsaid the wrong thing at the tempting moment. And how many times in your life have you said that thing because you just needed to say it, and then you spent the next goodness knows how long going, why did I have to say that? Now, an interesting point when we're talking about interpersonal skills and building our brand is this whole thing about saying no. And who finds it hard to say no? And I'm sure we're all nodding. And the thing about saying no is that we have to set boundaries, especially now. Because if we're not setting boundaries, protecting our time, we are the ones who burn out. So it's challenging because, you're going, well, I want to be this amazing brand and I want to show up like this. But if I say no, what if they don't like me? What if I let them down? What if I come across in a certain way? So your starting point is to say, separate the decision from the relationship. When someone asks us to do something, often we think, well, if I deny the request, it's the same as denying the person. So you got to separate it. Make your decision and then find the courage and the compassion to communicate it. And this is a tool called the yes sandwich. So it's got 3 parts. You want to positively acknowledge the person's intent, graciously say no, and then offer an alternative, which is optional. So in the real world, if someone says, come to this online networking event or quiz night, it's after hours, you could say, thanks so much for the invite and for thinking of me. Unfortunately, it's my family time. I'm already committed. Please think of me for the next time because I'd love to be there. And so it's not what we say, but it's the way that we say it. And sometimes sometimes we think we've just got a time management problem, but sometimes we've got a people-pleasing problem. And if someone says, can you do something? We often default and go, I'll do it for you tomorrow. But your plate is full, right? But we all want to be these A-type superstars. I'm amazing. I'm going to show up powerfully. But if we start to compromise quality when we are overloading ourselves. So you want to say to them, let me check my calendar and I'll come back to you. So now what you want to do is you've got that buffer, look at your calendar and you can come back to the person, manage expectation. and say, okay, well, my diary's swamped until Friday morning. Would Friday afternoon work for you? And you'll probably find 9 times out of 10, they'll say, yeah, no problem. Unless it's an emergency, we show up and we do what we need to do. But if we can start to manage our time and boundaries better, and maybe you're thinking, well, it's my boss. What must I do if it's my boss? You can say to them, look, currently I'm working on X, Y, and Z. If I take this on, one of these things need to lose my focus. Where do you want me to prioritize? So now the ball's in their court. And guys, just remember when we're telling about saying no, protect your downtime. As brands, you cannot just be always on 24/7. You need that self-care and recovery time. And so if you're saying yes to something out of guilt or fear, it should probably be a no. Because how many times did we go, okay, I'll be there because you felt bad. And then you spend the whole time going, why am I here? I could be relaxing. I could be with my kids. And so just remember, own your no and do not give it away too easily. And we know the fear of missing out, right? But what about JOMO, the joy of missing out? And instead of focusing, but I'm going to miss an opportunity, so what do I want to go big on? And that's when we start to protect our time. And even Mr. Buffett said that the most successful say no to almost everything. Next part in the EQ equation, building our brand, is social skills, right? Because if we want to be a powerful brand, we've got to develop. It's not just about being ambitious, about being trustworthy, about being loyal. It's how do I grow meaningful relationships? How do I create them in my personal life, in my professional life, in my business, networking? And often when we hear networking, right, it's got an awful stigma. And we tend to think about those old mixers when we used to go and, walk around somewhere and collect business cards and we never used them. So that's not networking. Networking is connection, conversation, and collaboration. Because conversations are the currency of change. How do we add value? How do we be a powerful brand? It's through conversation, because the more you can understand and get to know someone, the more value you can add. I had a client who was about to go on maternity leave, and of course the whole conversation about work-life balance came up. And about a week later, I found an article on Harvard Business Review talking about the benefits of kids with working moms. And I copied the link, sent her a mail, and I said, hi, came across this, thought you would appreciate it, have a great day. And just that little act went so far to building a relationship. And just from my point of view, just to feel like, wow, I contributed. And it's so nice not to ask for something. And so networking is about being a go-giver. How can I contribute? How can I add value? And, are we having enough conversations in the right one? And sometimes, and it's easy to default to technology, right? Because we're busy. I'm just going to send a mail. I'm just going to send a WhatsApp. But if you need to deliver bad news or tell someone there's a delay, pick up the phone. Because let that person hear the sincerity in your voice. Because if you send a mail and it comes across in the wrong way, you're damaging your reputation. But if you can pick up the phone, send a voice note, something where you're getting to connect with that person, it will go a lot further. And set the stage. So before a conversation, if you're still angry and upset about something and you bring that to the conversation, it's not going to go well. If you can get yourself into a neutral state and be able to share based on fact, come from an assertive place, not an aggressive place, the conversation's going to go better. And don't make it personal. So avoid, this is your problem and this is what you always do, because defenses come up. So avoid bringing up the past, we stick to the present. Avoid attacking the person, stick to the problem. And beware of one-upping. Because, when you say to someone, I'm really stressed, and they go, you stressed? Oh, no, you don't understand what I'm going through. And if, we want to avoid that person, but we never want to be that person. And that's where listening comes in. And prepare ahead of time. As I said, set your intention. We can't control the response, but we can control what we want to say, how we want it to land, and what the desired outcome will be. But what stops us, right? Because we know conversations are powerful. And often we think, well, I don't know where to start. I don't know this person. But everyone's got a past, a present, and a future. So I could say to Aura, what did you do before you got involved in this organization? I could say, what's your biggest challenge right now? What are you doing for Rosh Hashanah? There's always going to be a starting point. And if you're not sure, ask the person to talk about themselves. But often the biggest thing that stops us reaching out is we think, well, I don't have enough time, you know, especially now. But guys, network most when you need it least. Build relationships now before you need them, because you don't want to feel like, well, now I'm in a situation and now this person thinks that I'm just coming to use them. But if we've built and nurtured relationships over time, when that's time, and it's not just about needing someone, but it's going to come in a more comfortable way. But what really stops us, this reaching out to people, is fear. And it's this false evidence appearing real. It's the fear of the unknown outcome. What if they don't like me? What if my ideas got not good enough? What if they say no? But just remember that success is measured by the amount of uncomfortable conversations we're willing to have and the amount of uncomfortable actions we're willing to take. And it's often the thing we fear the most that we most need to do. So what is it for you? Are you delaying that phone call, sending that mail? Maybe it's just reaching out to someone in your industry or your company and saying, you know, you've navigated the space so well. What advice or guidance do you have for me? Could we meet for 20 minutes once a month? And what is your worst case scenario? They say no, but it could also just be no, not now. And remember, email is a completely different animal. So just be aware, because we all know those people that CC everybody because they want to do a power play. So when you're applying to someone on mail, when this is pertinent for brand building, if you write something and you read it and you think, does this sound aggressive? Does this sound rude? Does this sound, and fill in the blank, pick up the phone. Because people are more sensitive now than ever. And so always rather pick up the phone. And just be aware of the basics with mail, you know, keep it short, check your spelling. Did you spell their name right? And just go through those email bugbears that think about what bothers you on mail and make sure that you're not doing the same thing. So how do you build a relationship with someone that you think hates you, or you think, you know, I've tried everything. I don't know how to connect to this person. So what you want to do there is simply go back to basics and ask for advice. So, and in a genuine way. So if you're trying to establish a rapport with someone and you said to them, you know, I'm looking for a book on business, on personal development, what do you recommend? And because what we want to do is help this person meet their need for significance. And it's not about being inauthentic. So if you said you asked this person for a book and they gave you an example, they said, right, read this one, I loved it. You can now come back in a week, in a month and say, wow, I started reading it, I've read it, I love this part. What stood out for you? And all you're doing is creating the foundation that you can build on this relationship. And the last part of motivation in terms of emotional intelligence is about motivation. And this is about how do we motivate ourselves as well as how do we motivate others. And why does this matter for brand building? Because I'm sure, and especially over this last 18 months, have we all battled with procrastination? Have we all battled with putting stuff off? Have we all said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get healthier, and then you don't? And when we let ourselves down and we break promises we make to ourselves, that's what dents our self-confidence. And that's what you need as a brand, right? So we can get motivated extrinsically, which is around the career, the title, the job, the car, the house, fill in the blank. But you've all had those times where you wanted something, you got it. And maybe 6 months later, or maybe 6 weeks later, you're going, yeah, it's okay. And then you're looking for the next thing. So it's not that sustainable. We want to drive ourselves on intrinsic motivation. That is about purpose. That is about doing something in service of others greater than ourselves. Because willpower is not a strategy. You know, the willpower requires that you've made a choice. And sometimes we haven't. You know, it's like, well, I want to be healthy, but I want the cookie. I want to connect to my family, but I just need to check in these last emails. And so that's not sustainable. Motivation is about 3 things. You need a compelling goal. You need to know how to get from A to B, and the confidence. And the way you build that confidence is being able to look back in your past experiences, your past wins, and acknowledging them. Because by going, wow, I did that. Oh, well, if I did that, I can do this. And it's just these little incremental nudges over time that moves us into the success we want, the brand we want, the person we want. But your best tool when it comes to motivating yourself and building a brand is this concept of your future self. So if I said to you, are you the same person you were 3 years ago? You're going to go, no. And so arguably, are you going to be the same person in 3 years' time? No. So now what you want to do is you want to see your current self and your future self as two different people. And when you can do that, you will start to make decisions today in your own best interest. So if you carry on the same trajectory of maybe not sleeping enough, grinding, going, not taking enough self-care, not pursuing the goals that you want to do, where are you going to be 6 months, 1 year, 3 years from now? And so again, if you carry on the trajectory, are you setting future you up for success? So let's say you said to yourself, okay, the me of 3 years' time is in this specific role, but it requires a lot of public speaking. But you of today have convinced yourself you're an introvert and you are awful at public speaking. So every time there's an opportunity, you don't want to go near it. So reframe it and say, okay, well, if I want to get there, every time there's an opportunity, I'm going to show up to it because I've got to be authentic to them, not to how I'm feeling today. And so you just want to do it and do it and do it until it becomes so natural that you're setting future you up for success. And you'll get the slides and really think to yourself, who do I want future me? This is shaping your brand. So how much money do they make? What's a typical day like? What do they think about? What do they do for fun and excitement? How do they contribute? What do they talk about? Who are their friends? And the more crystal clear, and if you can journal about this and really think, who do I want to be? And you just behave yourself into it, one small action at a time. It's micro choices throughout the day. And then how do we motivate other people? So depending again where you are in your career trajectory, if you're not having to motivate other people now, at some point you will. And it comes down to 3 things. It's about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So this comes from Daniel Pink. He did an amazing TED Talk. And autonomy is just simply the ability to have choice over your world. And that's why people that micromanage do not have particularly good brands, because it's very destructive. People want choice. So you guide people with the what and the why, but let them figure out the how, even if it's not how you would do it. Mastery, and this relates to all of us, mastery again is about being able to you want to develop skills, you want to have competence in the things that matter to you. And again, purpose. Am I doing something that's part of something bigger? And so if you're in an organization or you want to motivate other people, remind them of the vision, remind them where they sit. So I always say, if you think about, this is the Rube Goldberg machine. So you get the boot kicks the ball and all this stuff happens and the light switch goes on at the end. If one of these little cars at the bottom fell off, that light switch isn't happening. And it's just sometimes even for us to gain perspective and just remember that yes, we're isolating. And whether you're in part of a company, whether it's your own business, just remembering that you matter. Sometimes we just get so in tunnel vision and isolated that we think, well, if I do this now or later, does it matter? But that's how you build a powerful brand, because it's showing that you take in cognizance, I'm part of a bigger team, or I'm part of this network, this supply chain. If I don't do this, now am I going to delight my clients? So whether you are showing up to a client, whether it's to the rest of the team, you need to remember that you matter. And, if you're thinking to yourself, well, should I do this now or later? Bring yourself back to this image and remember that you are so integral. And even if you feel like you're doing something so small and insignificant, it does make a difference. And the way we spoke about those words in the beginning, and the word that you want to have as your brand and that what you want to be known for is trustworthy. Because trust is about credibility and consistent behavior. And maybe you feel like, well, what if I've damaged my trust? But the good news is you can behave yourself back into trust. And also remember, building a powerful brand begins with, are you trusting yourself? Can you trust yourself? If you say, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and go for a walk, or I'm going to wake up and I'm going to start studying or read or do the thing you said you would do, if you can get better at keeping the promises to yourself, because we're great at keeping promises to others, this will naturally enhance your brand, your confidence. And what was really interesting is Google did a research project a few years ago called Project Aristotle. And they said, what makes the most powerful teams? What they found makes the most powerful teams was psychological safety. That is the ability to be able to share in front of someone, to say, this is what I think, these are my ideas, but know that you're not going to be judged. Again, it goes back to judging the idea, not the person. And so the more that we can create this sense of trust that people have with us, the more powerful brand we will be. And the simplest way to create trust is listening. And it sounds, but of course I listen. But think about the last time you had a conversation, right? Let's start with number one. Why does listening matter? Because the more that you are giving someone your focus and attention, you're making them feel like they matter. What happens, we've all been on that side when we're talking to someone and you know they're not paying attention or they're kind of checking mails in between. You feel invisible. So if you can give someone that opportunity to be heard, to be listened to, that is a powerful brand. But often what we do, right, we have a conversation and what we're really doing is we're thinking, I really want to be clever here. So I'm thinking about what I want to say next. This is going to be so clever. And we've stopped listening in the process. Or you're thinking to yourself, how can I fix this? And guys, here's a very powerful clue, a very powerful hint for ladies. Sometimes we just want to talk and we do not want your advice. We just want to speak. And sometimes just saying it and just getting it off your chest helps so much towards, working through something in your mind. So think about the next time you listen. Can you listen with your full presence, your full intention, your full attention, and listen to what they're saying? And the right thing will come up rather than focusing and having kind of this internal dialogue while they're talking. And you can't move the conversation in a more positive direction until that person feels heard and understood. So you'll go through, some of the principles of listening, it's about being patient. Don't try to fill in that other person's sentences. We want to listen with empathy. We want to hear for what's being said. Also, we want to hear for what's not being said, the nonverbal. We're going to touch on that. So you don't need to prove to someone that I'm listening. You want to show them that they've been heard. Something else, when you think about interpersonal presence in terms of building a brand, is this concept of feedback, right? Because feedback comes throughout our careers. We are either on the side of the table where we are receiving the feedback, or we're on the side of the table where we are giving the feedback. And feedback's really powerful. And if you want to be a powerful brand, ask for feedback. It'll come back to me who said it, one of the personal development gurus, is that you could, whether in your personal life or your work life, and you can go to your, let's say the example, you could say to your partner, how have I been this week out of 10? How would you rate me? You've been an 8. Okay, what would it take for me to be a 10 out of 10? So inviting feedback, you learn about yourself. And when you're the one giving the feedback, just remember, begin with a positive. If you had to start a feedback session and go, what were you thinking in that presentation? You've just broken them. And they're not going to hear anything you say. But if you started the conversation and you said, well, I'm really happy with this piece of work. This is going really well. I'm so happy about what you did there. I just think we could work on this specific area. Do it in private. Don't name and shame out loud. Offer solutions. And just remember, guys, when we are the ones receiving feedback, it can so easily feel like a personal attack. So we hope the person giving the feedback is doing it in the kind way, and you're always with the other person's best interest at heart. But just remember, when you receive feedback, it's a gift. It's a gift on where can I learn, how can I improve, how can I do things better? And again, always invite feedback. Now, also when it comes to interpersonal presence, if we can, so we can't be responsible for other people, right? But we're in a lot of meetings these days and all of them are online. Show up with the camera on, please. And unless you've got genuine issues with bandwidth, then fine, that's a separate issue. But if you show up with the camera off, you are missing so much in building your brand. Because if you are talking to someone Let them see, I know eye contact's a bit hard at the moment, but let them see the genuine reactions in your face. See that, let them see you. You create so much better connection when you can see the person. And also, if you're chatting to someone and their camera's off and you think you've just had the best meeting ever, but you missed the nonverbal, you missed that they frowned, you missed their eyebrows raised, you missed that they closed themselves off when you said something. So the more present we can be with that person, it also stops you from multitasking, the closer, the better that relationship is going to be. And so just some things in terms of virtual presence, in terms of how do we manage ourselves from a branding point of view. Be punctual, because you know that person in your life who's always 20 minutes late, right? And sometimes you lie to them so that they're on time. But if you think about that person who's 20 minutes late, what do we associate with them? They're unreliable, they're untrustworthy. How can I trust my clients with this person if they can't even show up in time for a meeting? So, and it may not be your intention, and you may just go, oh, I'm always 10 minutes late. Plan as much as you can. Get the link, check the connection, set an alarm for yourself. Being punctual is so important to being a powerful brand. Prepare, guys. So whether it's maybe you meeting someone for the first time, maybe you going on an interview, right? Go onto LinkedIn, have a look at them, read their reviews, read what they're interested in, read about the company. So when you show up to that interview, you can say, wow, I saw that you published an article on global warming. I found that really interesting. Here's a book you'd enjoy. So the more you can show up and prepare, the more that person is going to think highly of you. So make mail effective, we said, don't send someone a long thread with that says FYI. So help people with mail. Dress for the day. Your dress, if we're talking branding, is again, that's trust. Because if I showed up today in shorts and a t-shirt and I said, hey, I'm here to teach you personal branding, I'm not being very credible. So it's just about, am I inspiring trust to the people around me? It's not about being fancy or labels or brands. Am I inspiring trust in them? Don't multitask. And you don't have to have a title that makes you a leader. We have always got an opportunity to show certainty and leadership in terms of crisis. So some other interpersonal points when it comes to conversations before we start to close off. Sometimes we don't know how to deal with a certain situation and we're scared of damaging our brand. So let's say someone phones you after hours. You notice it. They phone you again after hours. Oh, this is a pattern. Happens a third time. Now you can go to that person and say, I've noticed that when it comes to these sorts of things, you're phoning me after hours. I'd appreciate it if we could keep it to working time because this is my family time. So once you've seen it's more than a once off, you can say something. And guys, pausing is not weakness. In body language, we say taking up space is a power move, but slowing down decision making in high pressure moments to think what you want to say, that is a powerful brand. And as we said, replace judgment with curiosity. Choose your language. So it's not you did this and you always do that, but how can we move forward? So your language is really important. And guys, we're going to fail. We could say the next time we have a conversation, you set your intention and you wanted to be this amazing brand, but we're human and you lost your temper or you shouted or you said something. Take that situation. So don't beat yourself up. Put it under a microscope and go, okay, I got triggered. Where did I get triggered? Why did I get triggered? Is it that person? Was it the situation? Did it bring out a sense of a fear of failure in me or a fear of incompetence? Why did I react that way? And then say, okay, now that I'm aware of that, what can I do differently the next time? That's all we can do is the best you can. And use a grounding question and just say to yourself, let's say someone says something or something triggers you and just say, okay, if I look at this moment in 10 years, does it matter? Does it really matter? Do I need to say this thing? Because it's very seldom we look back and we go, sometimes it's because we said something, sometimes because we didn't say something, but it's often the things that we said that we go, why did I say that? And it eats us up for years afterwards. So in that moment, just ground yourself and make the decision. Is this going to impact who I am as a person? How do I want to show up? And remember that mastering your people skills we always say, oh, it's soft skills today. This is a life skill. And if you want to develop a powerful brand, it's how are you managing the relationship, not only to yourself, but the relationship to others, because work, branding, everything, the quality of your life is dependent on the quality of your relationships. And so we want to make sure that every day we are doing the best we can to nurture them. And, just a side note, when we talk about the relationships to ourselves, it's just remembering that, our careers are not a ladder. It's a maze. And sometimes we're feeling like we're going backwards, and then we go diagonal, and then we go forwards, and we take 3 steps back. But at every point that we get to, it's another opportunity to meet new people, to learn new skills, but to reinvent yourself as a brand. And it's not saying don't be authentic to who you are, but stay relevant. You can keep reinventing yourself. Do you want to move into a different industry? Find out all you can about it. Stay relevant now in the industry that you're in. Are you feeding, it's that relationship to yourself as well. So surround yourself with amazing people. Listen to podcasts. Listen to books. There's so much incredible content out there that you are inspiring yourself through this. And so just remember that when you have those days of kind of self-doubt, and when we think, well, I've tried everything, or I'm not getting where I want to be, just bring it back to who's that vision of your future self. And it just reminds you that whatever you're going through now, this is just a speed bump, and that you have the choice to create yourself into that brand, into that person you want to be. So instead of saying, well, what should I do today? You could just say, what would my future self want me to do today? And that brings you into alignment. And so again, it all comes down to intention. Who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? How do I want my family to remember me during this time? My colleagues, my work. And the more intentional you can be about who you want to show up, and set alarms in your phone, have an alarm that goes off randomly throughout the day at 2 o'clock. Or what I do actually before every single meeting is I look the day before and I see what's in my calendar, and 10 minutes before that meeting I set an alarm. I don't put words in my phone anymore, but you can do that. So to remind yourself, do I want to be confident? Do I want to be bold? Or, what I do is 10 minutes when that alarm goes off, I just sit for a few seconds and I think, okay, I'm going into this now. What skill do I want to bring to this? What do I want the outcome of this meeting to be? What do I want to demonstrate? And the more intention you can bring to who you want to be in each of these situations in your work and personal life, because it's different. Who you want to be as a business person is different to who you want to be as a parent or as a partner. So that's the key, is in just saying, okay, grounding back to alignment. Not what do I want to do, but what do I want future self to do? And this quote, and I share it every time I do this presentation, comes from Austin Kleon, and this is the essence of personal branding. And it's build a good name, keep your name clean, don't make compromises, don't worry about making a bunch of money or being successful. Be concerned with doing good work. And if you can build a good name, eventually that name will be its own currency. And to close off, guys, before we move to questions, just remember, so Woody Allen said 80% of life is just showing up. And you can create yourself into the brand you want to be. And that's what this is. Decide who you want to be, create yourself, and then just show up as that best version of yourself every day. And the opportunity is there. You just simply need to show up to it. Whether you feel ready, whether you feel like you don't have all the skills, if you just keep showing up, don't aim for perfection, but aim for progress. So what we've looked at is that your brand is the culmination of everything you do and everything you say. And so think to yourself, okay, what do I want to be known for? And start to act congruently. Think to yourself, what are my interpersonal skills? What are the relationships I want to develop and make progress on? And take action. And I assure you that if you do, you will all build phenomenal brands and continue to own your space. So I'm going to stop sharing and come back. And Trace, I'm going to open it to you if we've got any questions. So guys, thank you and apologies for the beginning, but we just remain calm under pressure.
So I think with regards to our glitches this week, our excelled in this topic today, from a false start on Monday to a technical issue today. But really, what an absolutely outstanding and magnificent webinar. I know Ian is going to have something to say, I'm sure, very shortly, as well as Philip. So we'd like to open up to any questions that you have, comments that you'd like Laurie to hear. I see people posting already in the chat box.
Oh,
Very
super.
interesting, inspiring.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for the outstanding presentation. And I'm going to open up before we read everybody's comments. Are there any questions for Laurie? So Laurie, from my side personally, I've sat in so many boot camps on personal branding, and I love your content. I personally find it extremely inspiring, and it always seems to come at a time where you kind of think, what is the way forward? Who should I be? What is going on? And we as individuals are so overwhelmed with living in the rat race, working under pressure, balancing home life, family life, and every single pearl that you give us just helps to put things into perspective and to just stop and think and be present, be in the now, and think about your own personal self and who you want to be, how you want to be represented, and what you want to be known.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. I see.
Key takeout for me.
Thank you. I do see that we've got a comment from Les that I just want to make sure we get to. He said, can you recommend the way forward? What should we get out and actually do? So I think if I had to say, okay, what would I do from here? I don't know, if you journal, I would recommend, take a piece of paper, because sometimes when we think, I'm going to just think about things, there's a difference between writing something down and thinking. I would journal on this, and I would sit and I would just, maybe the way forward is to say, have that honest conversation and go, okay, maybe how would I relate? Maybe it's starting as small as going, what are the key relationships in my life? Where would I rate them out of 10? Okay, maybe out of 10, why is this one an 8? Why is this one a 5? What could I do to improve it? Maybe it's about thinking or identifying, okay, there's this specific work relationship that is not where I want it to be. What can I do? And I think the more honesty you can have with yourself, and the more that you can recognize a blind spot or see an area of opportunity and set your intention. I think it's about, well, who do I want to be? What is that brand? And do the future self exercise. It's an amazing exercise. And I think the answers will start to reveal, and I think the more honest, it's not branding is something, it's not something you do. It's who you are. And the more authentic and real and genuine and, or maybe you've recognized, okay, I actually haven't tried to see this situation from their point of view. Maybe I don't have empathy. Maybe I need to start saying, okay, what's it like for them? And I think if you can kind of, for me, the starting point is a better set of questions. So that for me is a good starting point for you to have a bit of self-reflection and then take it from there. I hope that's answered it.
Laurie?
Yes.
Just something crossed my mind now while you were talking, answering Les's question. Obviously, we're in environments, a lot of us working from home and all of that kind of thing. But in a normal working environment, when you're physically seeing people, how impactful is that environment on you in your own dealing with people and reacting to their situation and trying to be the true brand that you really want to be, and honest, reliable, trustworthy, and they putting up this fence in front of you so that they don't get that message? How do you break through that barrier?
I think the one distinction to make is that whether we're sitting at home or whether we're sitting in the office, you have to be consistent. We can't have one persona for this is me in my online world and now this is me in the working world. You have to be consistent across the board. Same with social media. You can't be one personality on Facebook, on then LinkedIn, then someone else who walks in the office. So you've got to have a consistency. I think if you're talking about that person who's putting up a wall to you, my first question would be, are they putting up a wall just to me? Is this what they do to everybody? So it's understanding who are they as a person. And then secondly, if it is, let's say that it's to everyone, I would start with, how can I find a starting point to create a relationship with this person, rapport with this person? Because all of you are an honest, genuine person, so no one can take that away from you. But where is it asking for advice? Is it sitting down and asking for feedback? Is it sitting down and going, I've noticed that when it comes to these situations, do you need to call it? Is it an aggressive person that you need to say, I'm finding a bit uncomfortable? So is it something you need to mention? Or is it simply just trying to find a starting point to engage with this person? And often, this could be another whole thing on its own, Trace, but in strategic intervention coaching, there's something called the 6 human needs. And we all have 6 needs that we need to meet. One of these needs is the need for significance. And everybody has to meet that need. And often when you find, and we can meet it in positive or negative ways, sometimes what you find is when someone is either they're micromanaging or they're quite aggressive at work, that is their way to try and meet significance, like ego. Doesn't make it right or wrong, it's just how people meet their needs. But if you can try and meet this person's need for significance in a positive way, and whether it's, wow, great work there, I saw that the client was so happy about this. It's not about being insincere, but if you can help that person meet that need, it will shift a relationship. It's got to come from pure authenticity and honesty, but that is something that you can try as well.
So you're saying that, in short, that the barrier can be broken using the right approach?
Definitely. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
May not come quickly, may take a few months, may take a few weeks, may take a few months, but absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks. It was a great question.
Laurie, I see Ian has his hand raised. I knew he would.
Thanks, Tracy. I don't know if I'm doing this because you put me under pressure or whether I really have a question. It's actually more a compliment to Laurie. So first of all, I'm in a very similar space to Laurie, and I must compliment you, Laurie. That was absolutely brilliant. I think the one thing I just want to you're welcome. The one thing I want to reiterate, and I think Laurie, you emphasized it, is that we're all going through such a difficult time at the moment, and what you've described is so important to each and every one of us. And the hardest part is that we actually have to have what I call critical conversations. And those critical conversations are very difficult. They're not easy. I think many conversations that I've had in the last 18 months have been difficult. And that's my personal conversations. And this is something I do every day. So I can just imagine people that are not confident in themselves. Yeah. But I just want to reassure everybody that this is a journey we're all going on. And the more you invest in yourself, the more confidence you build, the better it's going to be for you, because we can't keep quiet. We actually have to have those difficult conversations, because the longer we keep quiet, the more we risk being left behind. And I don't think any of us can afford to be left behind. So Laurie, thank you so much. I'm delighted. I'm actually delighted that you had the technical hitch on Monday, because I couldn't make it on Monday. So this kind of like helped me. So everything happens for a reason. So Laurie, thanks again. And Tracy, thanks for arranging this. This was great.
Thanks. And that's a great comment. And I just wanted to add on something you said, which is really important to mention, where you said, don't leave it. Because often something bothers us and we think, oh, I'll leave it alone. But it's still there. And it builds and it builds and it builds. And then that person does something so small, and then you just lose it and explode, and you lose your temper in the wrong time because you never addressed it straight away. So, and thanks for bringing that up, that it may be, I like to call it a courageous conversation. So maybe you do need to go have that courageous conversation, but it's better to do it sooner than later, because it will save the relationship.
So Laurie, I do see in the chat box, Janice has a question, and she'd like to know if you can advise a few specific question prompts to jot down in a journal for people to clarify their brand.
Yeah, absolutely. What I'll do is when I send you the slides, I'll put that in the mail as well.
Wonderful, thank you. So before we end off today, I'd like to thank Laurie again for her time. I see Ariella is still with us, and I'm sure Ariella would like to say a few words before we close. So Laurie, from my side, thank you so much.
Thank you, Trace. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I don't want my words to be the last one. So, after Laurie, I just want to really thank you, Laurie, because I'm listening to you and I'm thinking this is actually such an important exercise to do when people are looking for jobs, when they're writing their CV, when they're preparing themselves for interviews. Because the more they are familiar with themselves and who they are and how they present themselves, the better their chances are as far as getting a job or even getting new clients. So that's why I really think that I'm looking at the numbers there and I'm thinking we need to get more people to listen to this wisdom and to your insight and to our ideas and tips. But I know that a lot of people register and we will send them the email. I'm thinking, Tracy, also to send the email to the ones that wanted to attend on Monday, because they may not be able to attend on Thursday. I'm just listening to Ian, I'm thinking it may, with some of those we missed out. And I want to thank you, Laurie, for really always giving your time. You're just such an amazing person. You really walk the talk of what you're saying, and it's a role model for us. And we appreciate that you're part of our AutoJet elite mentors. So thank you.
No, thank you for the opportunity. It's so special to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So thank you, Ariella and Laurie. We wish all participants on the call a good rest of the day. Bev, thank you for joining us from Cape Town. We wish your family well, and we look forward to seeing you all online. We have next week our final bootcamp series for AutoJet on leadership with Janet Goldblatt, and we have an incredible webinar on Tuesday afternoon with Ian Mann on gaining perspective. So we will put everything in our post-webinar communication. And Laurie, I sincerely, I've made notes, the 6 human needs. So I'm going to be calling you soon. And I thank you again for your time, your flexibility, and for all the value you add to AutoJet and all.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,